Welcome back, everybody. In this lesson, we are going to look at how Karate supports data-driven testing. What is data-driven testing? Data-driven test is when you externalize the test data from the test code itself. In the test that we have been writing so far, you could see that the test data and the test were tightly coupled. For instance, in this case, we are trying to put or update post ID 1. And you can see, even though we have used a variable here, this scenario can only test this particular instance. You can only update post ID 1. If we were to uh, if we were to assert for post ID2, we would have to duplicate the scenario and so on. Similarly, whether in this case, where we are trying to uh, fetch a particular post by passing in query parameter, again, even though we have used a variable here, it is you can only work with one particular test data in this scenario. If you wanted to fetch post for user ID2, you would have to duplicate this scenario. And this is not ideal. Ideally, what you would want is you would want to reuse the same scenario, the same test, and you want to rerun the same test for multiple instances of your data. And ideally, you would like your data to be separate. So once your test is written, you could only work with various combination of data. And that is what we are going to do in this lesson. So we are still going to work with the post API. So we will start by creating a new feature file. Let's call it data driven posts or feature. Let me start by just copying some of the stuff from here. I want the feature, I want the background, I want to have that same URL because I'm still working with the same APIs. What do I want? Let's say I start with get and I have this. Okay, let's start with this. In this case, I could only test with I could only test for post ID 1. Uh, let's see how we would run this scenario in a data-driven manner. In data-driven manner, what you would want here is, instead of scenario, you would call this a scenario outline. Uh, s- uh, this is sort of like, if you have done object-oriented programming, what you were doing earlier was a particular instance because you were specifically testing one. With outline, you're saying this is kind of a template and not the specific instance. Specific instance is when it will take on one particular data instance and run that test, and that is when it will run as an actual scenario. So for now, this is an outline, and whenever you have an outline, you might go what it means is the data is external to this scenario, and the way to express this data is through this special keyword called as examples, and we will fill in the details pretty soon. uh, so let's say and this is where this is how you externalize the data. Examples is nothing but a tabular form of keeping your data, but again, it would be separate from the test itself. This would be the test and this would be the data. uh, let's say I want to have this post ID as the data, and let's say I start with just one uh, variation or one instance of the data, and that's all I need. So in this case, I don't want this variable anymore, because instead of getting that value from the variable which I could get only once, I would get it from this and I will get the data from the table itself. So I'll remove this. If I remove this, I'll get the path here, and I'm still using the post path, but instead of post ID, the variable that I was using, I'm not using it anymore, but I'll be using this data now. And let's say I'll start with post ID 1, and the way to use this post ID would be by using this angular brackets. So what this means is I will use the base URL, then I'll append this path, and then I'll append one more path, and the value of this, because it is an angular bracket, it will come from the example section, which is nothing but a table, and this will define the variable from which to fetch the data. So had there been any other variable here, let's say xyz, uh, and that had its own value, let's say abc, you could use xyz in angular brackets at any place in this test. Okay, but for now let's only work with post id, and rest everything remains the same. Again, because this is post id from examples, we are going to use angular bracket, and let's use this, and I think this should be good enough. So let me run this, and one test passed. So if you uh, look at the results in the report, you should see everything passed. Uh, you could also use this post ID filler in the outline statement as well. So instead of just saying UID, you could also see, because we are using the post ID, again use the angular brackets, and you could do it here. And now you could use multiple instances of your data, the multiple combinations that you would want to run your test against. So what this will do is it will run this test 3 times. The first time with post ID as 1, the second time with post ID as 2, and third time with post ID as 3. And appropriate assertions will be made based on the data used for that particular iteration. And also the outline statement here, this comment here, would also be updated when you look into the report. Let me just run this. And if I refresh this, you see here it says verify post 1, verify post 2, verify post 3, and all 3 of them have succeeded. It is not just one variable that you can work with. You can work with multiple variables. For instance, let me take the example where we were creating a post. I think this was the one. Let me copy this and take this as another scenario outline. Again, this will be a scenario outline instead of scenario, because we are externalizing the data, and we'll again have examples, because that is where the data will be coming from. Paste it here. Now what do we have here? We had title, body, and user ID as 3 different things that we were trying to post, that we were using to create a post. So we could do is we could externalize all of those 3 sets of data. I could say title, and then I could say body, right? And say title, and then body, title, body, and then title. I can say, then provide values. I can say title 1, 2, and title 3. Similarly, I can say 1, body 2, and body 3. And let's purify this. All right, I think this is good enough for now. And here what we will do is, again, instead of a specific title, we are going to say, because this is externalized, we are going to use it from the examples table. And the way to do it again is using the angular table, the angular bracket, sorry. And finally, the user ID. And not only could you use this in the request and the scenario outline, but also for assertions as well. Verify that a new post for user ID, this guy, can be created, and rest everything looks okay. We should expect 201. In here, we wouldn't know the ID, so it should be a number, but a title should be what is present in the examples table. So we can say this is the title and this is the body. And finally, this is the user ID, right? And if I run this, all three of them should have passed. All right. And let's quickly verify our report, and you can see that all three of the test cases have passed. All right. Uh, One final thing, what we could do is, so sometimes when you have multiple scenarios in a feature file, this can get very messy depending on the various combination of data that you could have. Imagine this going, this could grow pretty large pretty soon. So an ideal way would be to have this in a separate file, preferably a JSON file itself, and then that way you can uh, you're still externalizing the data, right? Because your test, you don't have to repeat the test now for every instance of data, but even more uh, pleasant way of organizing this would be to have this entirely in a different file itself, so you could look at it. You can only look at the data when you want to add any new instance of it. So what we will do in this case is, let's create a separate JSON file. uh, we'll call that as post underscore data dot JSON, which will be nothing but it's an array, and each array is I think we already have the array somewhere, right? We could use this in the JSON file. We could use this. I can say I can repeat this and then this, and I can probably use the same data that we use here, title and title one. So instead here we can say title one, title two, then title three, right? And again, for body, we'll say body one, body two, body one, body two, and three. And again, we'll say this as user ID one, two, three. All right, and let's keep this as is. Let's create a separate outline. Uh, is this? I hope this runs. Uh, in examples now, we don't want to use this table, but we want to read the JSON file that we just created. So we'll use the keyword read to read the JSON file. This is the name of our JSON file, and it is in the same uh, where the tests are located. So I think I'm in the right path. I think rest everything should work as is because the names are the same, the title, body, and user ID. So it should use the same name. Let's try and run this quickly. Something has gone wrong. It says post data is not defined. If quotes, see, yeah, that was the reason. Because it's a file name, and the read function expects the file name, and uh, there should have been quotes. So as you can see, this and this uh, is equivalent, but now you have a much nicer. So when you come to post underscore data dot JSON, you can only focus on the data, and you can work with the different combination of your data input, and not worry about the test itself. So this is how you externalize your data from the test, and this is how Karate helps with data-driven testing. And this is how I think you should mostly be running your test. I hope you found this useful. I will see you in the next lesson. Thank you.